Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and the star of the show today is going to be a Shakespeare Alpha SS 412. This one was sent in by JP. JP's got a fine collection of reels. This one is a Shakespeare, and it was made in Korea, so kind of by guessing, probably 1990s. It's certainly the earlier frame size. It's kind of chunky and rectangular. Baitcasters have certainly evolved. They had the metal frames at one point. This is not a Shakespeare, it's an Abu Ambassador, but they went from these metal sided ones back in the 70s and early 80s, and eventually new plastics and graphite and the like came in, and this was kind of the first edition of it. And of course today's modern baitcasters look a whole lot different, right? And this one's even aged, but you'll have the high-speed gearing, a narrow profile, fancier things. Now, unfair comparison, right? The $100 reel and a reel in the $20 range at the time, I guess. But regardless, JP has a beautiful collection of the reels, and he had asked me to take this one apart, service it, and make sure that everything's good, given that it's in a beautiful condition that it's in. So we'll show you how to take this apart, service it, and put it back together again to take it fishing if you have this reel. If you're thinking of buying this reel in the used market, you'll see how it's made, and we'll get started. And I like to get started by doing a couple of things. I like to tell you to use a parts tray. When you take your pieces and parts off, put them in the tray. That way you won't lose them. And then also I like to wear a glove on my hand just to keep the oils and greases and the like off of it. You don't have to do that, but I've grown accustomed to it, and I kind of recommend it to anybody who's interested in doing reel repair. Over time, you never know what you're going to come in contact with. And then finally, I recommend that you take pictures along the way. Now, you don't have to do a video like I'm doing. Use your cell phone camera, use a standard digital camera. Heck, use film if you want, I guess. And when you take that camera picture, you'll have a reference point so that you know the sequence and the orders that these pieces of parts are going in. Okay, so we've just removed the handle, and what I forgot to do is to thank our first responders and our hometown heroes, our police, our fire, our EMT, our ambulance squads, as well as all of the healthcare workers, the doctors, the nurses, the administrators, everybody who's working to heal those that are sick and help prevent the spread of this virus. So thank you to all that are involved in that. Okay, we're going to take off the handle, which we just did. We're going to take off the star adjuster. You'll notice that on top of the star adjuster there isn't the traditional collar that you see on some. The collar is actually embedded in this adjuster. Interesting observation there. And then we have the bearings, and we have some other pieces. There's 3 side plate screws. I believe that that's how it releases the other side. This reel is a mag reel with a single ball bearing. I think we just saw the single ball bearing, but let's see if we can't release that and find out what's going on over there. We'll do that. These are, I call these thumb screws. I'm not sure if that's the right term for them, but most of the time you can actually remove them without using a screwdriver. And if you have the hand strength, if you don't be afraid. There's a slot in there for a screwdriver. In this case they fully cooperated, which was nice. Okay, we have all 3 out. That should enable me to take the side plate off now. It's been a while since I worked on one of these. Yep, we have our side plate, we have our mag pieces. Looks like they've lost their little mag shells, but that's okay. We have a spool, and spool has the shaft here, a little bit of dirt on that, so we're going to clean that off. I'm going to use a cotton swab just to get the old grease off. I'm going to use a paper towel as well, just to clean it up, make sure that it's nice and shiny. So we mentioned it's only a single ball bearing. We saw the single ball bearing. It's in the other part of the reel. And while I have the case open, I'm going to get the dried grease out of this one. I'm going to use a Q-tip. That's a good Q-tip. That's not the generic. I'm going to use a cotton swab to get through that. And that's going to enable me to put fresh grease down without worrying about spreading anything. Kind of finding this interesting. I'm not quite sure what we have here. Looks like we have some pieces that are hanging over from the magnets. Not sure what that design is, but it does look like it's just hanging around. Alright, but at any rate, see if we can get those off so that they don't interfere. Alright, so that's a side plate, relatively unsophisticated. I'm going to use a Penn Precision Reel Grease. It's the blue grease you see me using most of the time. Yeah, it's a Shakespeare reel. Well, I guess these days Shakespeare is actually owned by the same company that owns Penn, Pure Fishing. But regardless, it doesn't matter whose grease you use, but it does matter that you use fishing reel grease. Put a little bit of grease onto the stud that's going to be the spool side for that. I'm just going to set that off to the side. I don't put everything in my parts tray. If the parts are big enough that I'm not going to lose them on my desk, then I leave them that way. Okay. There should be 2 screws here that's holding on the case. Those 2 screws should be the only thing left now to remove the gear side. Those appear to be Phillips head screws, so we're going to go ahead and take those off. And these are nice reels for drop fishing. I don't like the reel as a casting reel because it is a very tight reel. It only has that single ball bearing, and that tends to slow the reel down in terms of casting. But from a drop fishing standpoint, if you're on a pier, if you're in a boat, those kinds of things, it seems to do wonderfully. All right, I took those 2 out. I'm expecting to see what I call a traditional gear setup underneath. We'll go figure that out. You can see the 3 long screws that went across to do the hold on the other side case. And the reel overall is very clean. All right, let's take the main gear off here. That'll show us what's underneath. Underneath the main gear we have a spinning idler gear, I guess, which is going to turn the piece up here, the line guide. Underneath that we have a click ratchet. That click ratchet is going to hold your anti-reverse dog. The anti-reverse dog is a traditional forked anti-reverse. You can see it here. It has 2 sides to it, and there is a gap in between there. This one's pretty tight, but you can see, I hope you can see that there's a gap between there, and that gap rides on this ratchet. So I'm going to take that off in just a moment. We're going to remove the yoke. It's called the yoke because it traditionally looks like a yoke from a oxen team. You have the 2 springs which are embedded in the yoke. You have a little bit of grease onto the carrier, so let's get that off. And this grease does not look used, so I don't think that I think like the outside of this reel, there just isn't much going on internally, and in terms of it having been used before. This is your click ratchet, so we'll take that off. That's going to intersect, we'll show you that in a moment, that's going to intersect with this release mechanism here. You can see a bent up tab, and that's going to intersect with this, and then when you trip the reel, you will get the trip back or the spring back. Alright, this is your anti-reverse. You need to thread that so that one tine on each side of the fork is on each side of this, and then we can put that in. This is rectangular, so you need to find the rectangular portion of the gear shaft. And then that's going to seat over the stud here, and that's how you install the anti-reverse. Now when you're spinning your reel, you'll notice that it kicks it back. There's a little stud here. That stud right there is holding it in place, and as soon as you go to back pedal the reel, it sucks it in, and that's what causes you to have an anti-reverse. We saw this little piece went on next. Now let's take a look at how that free spool works just from an educational standpoint. Very clean. I think all I'm going to do is put a couple of drops of oil on this. There's no sense cleaning it. There's no cleaning needed. So again, it tells me if that reel's been used, it's only been used lightly. Okay, we'll push down here. That's going to set that tab. You can see how it intersects now with that gap in that click rotor. And then as you go to turn the reel, it's kind of hard to do. Let's see if I can do it with my left hand so you can see. It's going to push the whole assembly up. And that's going to release the reel for spinning. Okay, we have this plastic or Teflon gear. They do not need grease. They're a petroleum product by nature. They have grease in them. Notice that there's two studs. It's probably easier to see this way. There's two studs on this. They're going to correspond with holes in the bottom of the main gear. And actually sometimes it's just plain easier to just put the assembly together like that before you install. That way you don't have to kind of jump around trying to figure that out. Let's just get these two pieces off here. And just inspect the main gear. The main gear is a hard, I'm sorry, the main washer. It's just hard. You can't even bend it. There's no lubrication required on that. And that's typical of low-end reels. They typically are not going to see service most of the time. These reels will kind of party until they drop. And then when they drop, unfortunately, in today's disposable society, they're just that. They're disposed and a new one's there. That's one of the reasons why I do this on my channel. The cost to service one of these sometimes is about the price of a new one. So I try to show folks how to do that so that they don't have to throw them away. All right, I've just reinstalled the plastic gear on there. I'm going to line all of this up, holding that plastic gear so that it doesn't fall out of the slots. And then we're going to push everything down here. And we want to make sure on the back end of this that we are seated with that plastic gear and the worm drive gear. Give it a turn. Make sure that it's turning your free spool, not your free spool, your line guide. And then we're in pretty good condition with that. When you go to the yoke, if you put it down and you didn't take pictures and you're confused right now, you're going to notice that there's a ramp on both sides of the back of the yoke. I can't tell you how many times I get this piece in on a reel that somebody says doesn't work. They had it apart, doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is that they've taken the yoke off and installed it backwards so that you don't have the reach. And I also get them in because this slot here, which goes on the spool like that, oftentimes when somebody works on a reel, they reverse this gear and they put it in like that and say, I don't get the turn of the spool. Well, you won't, because the other side is flat and the other side just doesn't grab the spool. So those are a couple of things you need to look for, not only in this reel, but any reel that you might be working on. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of grease into the carrier here. I'm going to grease up the pinion gear. You want to inspect the gears to make sure that they have all the teeth there. You want to determine what's the back and what's the front. You're also going to notice on the front side of this that there is a cavity that's going to hold those springs that we took out, so it's a good thing to do that. We'll go ahead and install that now. Sometimes you can't work that over. You got to go back the other way with the main gear, but in this case we're good there. Then we can put the two springs in. Those seat in the cavity. Just like that. Be careful now. If you start turning the reel, you might lose those springs, so be careful from here out in terms of what it is that you're doing. Okay, we have two adjuster shims. They are not flat. They have a curve to them. Somebody asked me in a question the other day, gee, the cap washer is bent. Should I flatten it out? Well, no. That provides the sensitivity on the reel in terms of your adjustments from the star adjuster. So you can set these up in any configuration. These were nested when they came off, so they're going to come back on in the nested position. Put the bearing shim on one side, bearing in, put the bearing shim on the other side, put a drop of oil on that bearing, give it a little drink there, and then we can close this reel up. So we're going to start by putting the kind of the reverse of the way we came in. I'm going to put this cover on first. This is why I like to work on it with it down, so that you can align the holes and not lose the springs or anything. And these side plate screws come off in different ways, so just you got to make sure when you're doing this just to pay attention to how they came off. There you go. That's a nice even set there. You can see it just snapped in basically. Now we can come in, put a little bit of grease. We did the one side of the shaft, we didn't do the other side of the shaft, so let's put a little bit of grease on that. Install your spool, and we can grab the other side of the reel. I'm not lined up for some reason. It's probably, there we go. You don't want to force anything when you do this. If you notice I've had a little gap here, just pull it out and put it back in. Don't go forcing anything. These things were designed to fit evenly, so don't mess with them. If you're finding that there's any tension or struggle in there, it probably means that you have a piece that's not seated properly, so go back and rework that. Okay, I have those two little screws here that belong to holding down that yoke assembly. We're going to go ahead and put that on. I think overall, nice reel. As I mentioned, it doesn't have a lot of ball bearings in it. I mean, by today's standards, you can find, geez, 5, 6, 8, 10 bearings, all kinds of craziness in the modern baitcasters. This one only has the one. It's going to be a smooth retrieve. The downside will be that you won't be able to cast it as far. But if you can live with that, then it's a nice little reel, and I'm sure you can pick them up at a decent price. All right, this one just needs to be tightened down a little bit. You can use your screwdriver just to make that final turn. I've tightened them up pretty close by hand. But if you need to snug it up, just use that screwdriver if your hand strength isn't there. Don't over tighten them. And all we need to do then is we need to service the line guide pawl assembly in the worm. You back off the, come on, you back off the cap. You work the pawl out, which is going to be a little bit of a problem here, but there you go. Get the pawl out. Check the worm gear to make sure that it's all smooth. Again, this is kind of an indication that this reel just hasn't been used or used much. Check your pawl. Make sure when you check the pawl, there's two shoulders here on the fork that usually will get dried grease in it, and if it gets dried grease in it, it performs poorly. So make sure that that's clean there. Go ahead and put the pawl back in. Put the cap on. This plastic caps, don't over tighten them, and do it by hand if you can, because you don't want to cross strip these. If you cross strip these, you're going to damage either the carrier, this cap, or you're going to damage the line guide. So be careful with that. Now we can put our star adjuster on, and we can give it a spin. Seems to be spinning fine. Grab our little handle washer. Put the handle on. Put our nut on. Remember, that came off in a clockwise direction, or counterclockwise direction, which is standard, basically, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So we're going to go ahead and Again, hand thread if you can. That way you don't risk it cross-threading. And a reel of this age, or any reel in particular, you may not be able to find the parts for it if you cross-strip them, so be careful about that. You can notice that it's perpendicular to the hole. That's usually a good indication that the nut cap will fit properly, and we are lined up with the hole for the screw. Let's get the screw in. We'll give it a test drive, make sure everything works. So JP, you got a nice reel here, and it's ready to go fishing again. At least I think it is. We'll give it the test drive just to make sure. It's, there you go, nice smooth operator. We have the, play around with the mag here. The mag is designed to control the backspin on the spool. It's hard to see it, but it's spinning nicely. And that's all on a matter of preference in terms of whether you want a lot or a little of that. You also have a spool adjuster on this side. You can back it off. Again, you're not going to get the casting capabilities that you are on the other side of the reels with the 8 or 10 ball bearing kind of thing. Make sure that your drag is holding. Make sure you have the anti-reverse fork proper, which we do. And this reel's ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, then please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please hit notifications so that you can see all of the videos that I post, as I try to post frequently. If you are a first responder, this is January, and I am offering to service your favorite reel for free, regardless of whether it needs a repair or if it just needs a tune-up. I know you're very busy and probably don't have the time to do the services that you would like. So contact me by email. Let me know what it is you're doing as a first responder, and I'll send you information on how to get that reel to me. And who knows, maybe you have the future video star for an upcoming video that I'll do on how to do the servicing. So if you have any questions or comments on this reel or any reel in particular, leave them in the comment box. If you're working on a reel and you're stuck, you can do that there as well, and I'll try to help you along, get unstuck. And finally, if you need a reel repaired, like JP just did here, well, I'll be happy to provide you with repair information if you contact me by email on the business card that follows. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.